Welcome back to the Infinite Podcast, folks. I'm your host, and today we're peeking into the future where VR meetings are taking over the conference room. Say goodbye to those stuffy suits and hello to avatars. Here's my hot take, Simon. Ditching body language for virtual nods might make us miss some human cues, and blending home with a virtual office? That's a recipe for never clocking out. Your thoughts?
Joe, tell me, who wouldn't miss the awkwardness of accidentally playing footsie under the table with Gary from accounting? But seriously, avatars lack the charm of real people fumbling with their papers or spilling coffee. And the home office VR blend, it's got potential to glue us to work 24/7. We need boundaries, or we'll all end up living in a digital Groundhog Day, work edition.
Simon, you've hit the nail on the head there. VR can't match the mayhem of a live meeting mess. That's where the real bonding happens. Plus, work-life balance in VR seems to me like we're leaning towards all work, no life. Boundaries get blurry when your desk is a headset away. Just imagine getting a midnight ping for an urgent virtual meet. No thanks.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, we're riffing about how virtual reality is switching up the whole meeting game. No more physical meetups, folks. It's avatars and virtual spaces now. But it's kind of weird not seeing the real fumbles and jumbles that make us all, human. And like mixing home and work with VR sounds like a one-way ticket to working around the clock. Not exactly my idea of fun.
Absolutely, Simon. See, the charm of an in-person meeting? It's irreplaceable. You pick up on vibes, body language. It's real. And let me push back on the VR work-life blend. It's like juggling fire, do it wrong and everything gets burned. Mixing home with work constantly? That's got burnout written all over it. People need space to breathe, not more screens, right?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. Like the office chaos, that's where the magic happens. Can you imagine if all we had to remember a coworker by was their floating head avatar? And talk about cramming your work into your crib just sounds like a fast track to losing my marbles. Feeling crammed is no joke. We got to, keep some parts of life screen free or what's left to unplug from at the end of the day. Am I right?
Simon, yeah, you bring up a wild point. What happens to the water cooler chat, the coffee breaks, those little things we all low-key live for at work? If everything's digital, it's like, where do we draw the line between logging on and life outside of bits and bytes? And hey, don't you think people are just going to get sick of screens? Isn't it too much of a good thing sometimes?
Joe, pulling up facts isn't exactly my jam, but I'll hit you with some truth bombs. Research suggests that, like when we switch to virtual, we lose a ton of nonverbal cues, That's 70 to 93% of communication gone. Poof. And speaking of screens, my dude, reports show screen fatigue is real. People are blinking less, eyes are getting strained, and well, let's just say our brains didn't evolve to stare at pixels all day. So yeah, too much of this good thing might just flip on us.
All right, Simon, get this. Stuffing all our communication into VR's got its glitches. We're talking about real office dynamics here, getting drained down the digital drain. Sure, tech's cool and all, but imagine a world where that awkward eye contact or a firm handshake is just gone, and about eyes getting fried from screens. Not exactly what the doc ordered, right? In the grand scheme of things, looks like we might be better off keeping it old school sometimes. What do you make of that, huh?
Joe, you're right there. Swapping handshakes for like virtual high fives? Man, we might as well be robots. Yeah, cool tech and all that jazz, but humans need, human stuff? And eye-wise? Bro, we're not built to swap sunlight for screen light. It's messing with our heads. I read somewhere that VR can make you feel isolated and even alter how you perceive space and time. Stirring a coffee cup, that simple thing has its own charm compared to tapping keys or swiping air in VR. Am I making sense here?
Yeah, absolutely. Making sense, Simon. You're saying we need the simple things, right? I'm with you there. Human stuff keeps us grounded. And you know about that VR isolation thing. It's kind of ironic. We're more connected than ever, but could wind up feeling pretty dang lonely. So when's the last time something as basic as stirring your coffee felt like, a little piece of zen in your day?
Man, Joe, It's like every morning with my coffee. That's my Zen moment. Stirring it, watching the cream swirl. That's my tiny ritual before the screen storm hits. It's those little real moments that keep us sane, huh?
Simon, stirring your coffee is like a calm before the storm. But for some folks, seems this VR craze might crush their calm altogether. Get this. Studies say prolonged VR use could lead to depersonalization. That's where you start feeling detached from yourself, kind of like being in a movie. Imagining every work interaction as a VR scene sounds more Black Mirror than board meeting. No thanks. I'll take my coffee and coworkers without a side of existential questions. You get me?
Yeah, Joe, that's it. You just nailed it. This whole VR deal sounds like a sci-fi flick waiting to glitch out on you. Like who wants to question reality after every meeting? And depersonalization sounds fun on paper until you're the one floating outside your body wondering if you're still you. Hard pass. Give me my real coffee, actual laughter, and that oh no, I dropped my notes moment any day. That stuff's got soul.
You're so on point, Simon. Seriously. Think about it. We're trading genuine belly laughs for, canned emojis and animations. That's a hit to the soul right there. It makes you wonder what's left when every mishap and giggle gets filtered through code. I mean, feeling connected, that's the stuff life's made of. And tech, cool as it is, can't replicate that warm fuzziness of human interaction. It genuinely bums me out thinking about it.
Joe, I get the love for the fuzzy stuff, but playing devil's advocate here, VR could be a lifeline for people far apart. Not everyone can jet set to a meeting. And, there are those studies showing that VR meetings can cut costs and save on travel. Reducing carbon footprint, that's a win, ain't it? So yeah, losing some human touch sucks, but thinking big picture, there might be some solid upside to this whole VR conference shindig.
Simon, you're not wrong. There's definitely a green angle to VR meetups, like slashing travel cuts costs and our carbon footprint. It's good for the planet, sure. But like I said before, it's about finding that balance. If we can tip our hats to Mother Nature while keeping human connection alive, then hey, maybe we've struck gold. Can we make VR meetings eco-friendly without turning into, bots? That's the challenge right there.
Yeah. I'm picking up what you're laying down, Joe. But let's chew on this. We slap a VR headset on Greta Thunberg, and bam, she's front row at the UN, no flight needed. That's cool and all, but listen, if our brains are tricked into thinking VR meetings are the real deal, do we start to forget how to interact when it's flesh and blood time? Feels like we might end up eco-friendly with a side of socially awkward. And can you imagine us hashing out serious deals with avatars and digital handshakes? Something tells me we'd lose that grit, you know?
Well, Simon, you've hit the nail on the head. We could save the planet one VR meeting at a time, sure, but then tossing face-to-face for face-to-interface might save on gas, but costs us that human spark. I wonder how this will play out in the long run. Are we zooming towards connection or disconnection? What's the next evolution going to look like? It's anyone's guess, right?
Yeah, Joe. Connection, disconnection. It's a fine line these days, right? Speaking of zooming indirectly, hackathons. They've zoomed right into our living rooms. Classic mingling of the tech brains. Now it's like innovate or isolate in your own space. And here's the kicker. Does whipping up tech marvels from your couch beat the hive mind we're used to, or are we coding our way into solitary confinement? What's cooking with team spirit when everyone's solo in their PJs?
Simon, I remember this one time at a face-to-face hackathon. You could feel the energy, man, buzzing through the room like electricity. Teams huddled around, bouncing ideas faster than ping pong balls. It was wild. Now, remotely, sure, you've got freedom, comfort at home. But that accidental eavesdrop that sparks an aha moment, or those late-night pizza-fueled breakthroughs, they're missing in action, right? It's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle while sitting alone in the dark.
You're spot on about the in-person hackathon vibes, Joe. But let's flip it, all right? Now we've got these home hackathons. Could be a game changer for the introverted code geniuses who'd rather skip the social circus. And companies are throwing in all kinds of virtual team building, like online escape rooms or pizza delivery sync-ups, trying to catch some of that old magic. but strike me down if it's just me thinking, ain't nothing compared to the real deal. Can Zoom really replace that accidental coffee spill that leads to a killer app idea?
right? So the thing is, these introverted wizards thrive in that quiet space. But it's about mixing solo runs with team sprints, because collaboration, that's where the magic happens, man. And look, companies are trying to rekindle that spark with online tools. But here's the deal. The nuanced dance of human interaction, those stumble upon moments of genius, they're kind of scarce when your teammate's just a thumbnail. Like, can we truly replace the whiteboard and corridor banter? Not so sure, buddy.
That's the $1 million question. It's like trying to cook without spices, kind of dull, right? How do we sprinkle in some serendipity with pixels and laggy connections? Still, gotta give creds where it's due. Those online tools are bridging gaps better than we thought possible. But between you and me, could any tech truly capture the messy glory of jam-packed war rooms and adrenaline-pumped brainstorms? What do you think, Joe? You think we're close to mimicking that or still a world away?
Well, cramming big brains into a room and just letting that creativity implode, it's irreplaceable. The tech we've got now, it's good, sometimes feels downright sci-fi, but it's not quite there. There's something about sharing the same air that ups the game, some kind of energy that doesn't transmit through fiber optics. So we're juggling convenience with, what's the word, palpable synergy? Yeah, I'd say we're still a solid trek away from replicating that in-person chaos that somehow breeds perfection, man.
Man, Joe, breathing the same air. I get that. Seeing someone's wild gesticulations up close, it's a whole vibe. But may I just throw in a curveball? Our tech could evolve, right? Like augmented reality hackathons where you're virtually elbow to elbow with your code buddy from halfway across the globe. And here's the kicker. Companies are even bringing coaches to keep spirits high. It's kind of like having a digital cheerleader. Sure, we're not exactly crossing the physical-digital divide yet, but heck, ain't this the next best thing?
Futuristic hackathons with AR sounds like a trip. It's like strapping on goggles and suddenly you're bumping virtual elbows. Almost feels like cheating physics, doesn't it? But let's be real for a sec. You slap on AR glasses and a dev coach pops up like some tech genie. Sounds neat, but there's a catch. You've got to hope your Wi-Fi doesn't bail on you, mid-magic. Plus, ever noticed how digital high fives feel? Yeah, like clapping with gloves on. Still, I'm with you. It's a sweet taste of what's maybe to come.
I mean, Joe, slipping on AR glasses for a hackathon, it's like putting fake muscles under your shirt and hitting the gym. You look buff till you try lifting something that ain't code. And if your Wi-Fi drops out, there goes your digital spotter, man. Now you're bench pressing with ghosts. You're halfway to Genius Town, and boom, you're ghosted by your own internet. Digital high fives, bro. That's like petting a dog picture and calling it therapy. Not quite the real deal, if you catch my drift.
Ha, Simon. That's it, man. You can't replicate the warmth of a flesh and blood handshake with a digital ghost. It's like trying to get a suntan from a picture of the sun. It looks bright, but you're not feeling the heat. We've got to keep our feet on the ground, even as we're reaching for those virtual stars. Fundamentals, they matter. A solid connection, Wi-Fi or otherwise, is non-negotiable when you're chasing that next breakthrough.
Ah, totally, Joe. We can grab all those shiny tools, but without the basics, we're basically in a tech desert, clutching at mirages. You said it, fundamentals. Like having rock-solid internet is the new, table stakes in this game. Without it, we're just kind of chasing our own tails in the digital sandbox, right? It boils down to keeping it real amidst all the innovation. No amount of virtual wizardry is going to replace that human touch, think ET, longing for home while phone calls are bouncing off satellites. We crave that connection, even if it's through cables and screens.
Yeah, speaking of fundamentals, it's like you can have all the AR wizardry in the world, but if your home setup is whack, good luck. You need a sturdy chair, man, because let's face it, those hackathon hours, brutal. Ergonomics isn't sexy, but try coding with a crick in your neck. Then there's the social fuel. Sure, you've got chat apps and whatnot, but nothing beats yelling across the table to debug something together. It gets down to this. Innovation thrives on interaction, not isolation. So while we adapt to home hackathons, we can't forget that the heartbeat of creativity is still very much human.
Absolutely, Joe. I mean, a sturdy chair's like the unsung hero here, right? It's all fun and games until you're the hunchback of Notre Dame after marathon coding. And ergonomics? Totally unsexy until you're walking around like a question mark because your setup's more twisted than a pretzel. Now, don't even get me started on social interaction. Digital's great for quick pings, sure. But is slamming keyboards in silent fury the same as a good old shoutfest debug session with your pals? Nah, it's like trying to toast marshmallows with a flashlight, just sitting there wondering why it ain't working. Teams thrive on that chaos. It's the secret sauce with fries on the side.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, Simon. A hunched coder is like no coder at all, man. And let me ask you, how many times have we solved problems just by, shooting the breeze around a packed desk? There's this vibe, right? When everyone's in sync and the pieces fall into place, almost like music. So here's my question, buddy. If we're sticking to remote hackathons for a while, what's the one thing you'd want to see improved that could bridge that gap even a sliver more?
Yeah, so there's this one thing I kept thinking about. Back in the day, my uncle used to have a killer garage band, right? They'd jam out every Friday night, just a bunch of guys and their instruments, nothing fancy. But like he always said, that recording separately never had the same soul, never quite captured the vibe. And it totally reminds me of these remote hackathons. If there's one improvement I'm itching for, it's gotta be better real-time collaboration tools, man. Tools that make it feel like we're all jamming in the same garage. Just smooth, seamless, feeling the energy, even if it's through screens. Getting close to that live magic?
Man, improving real-time collaboration tools is key. We're talking about creating a digital garage where ideas can jam just like in the good old days. It's got to feel less like interfacing with software and more like hanging out, tinkering, and sparking off each other till the magic happens. What do you guys think? What's missing from our virtual toolkits that could bring back some of that live band energy to home-based hackathons?
Yeah, speaking of real-time collaboration tools and all the wonders they do, transitions smooth as butter, my friend. They've also given us a front row seat to some epic gaffes. Remember those workplace barriers? Down like dominoes with every Zoom blooper. Like, once I watched a colleague turn into a potato mid-meeting, couldn't figure out how to switch it off. Watching someone explain quarterly reports as a spud? Priceless. What about you, Joe? Got any tales from the trenches of remote work hilarity?
Oh man, I've got stories. But first off, turning into a potato is exactly the type of thing that humanizes the whole corporate scene, right? So check this. Once witnessed a dude forget his camera was on during his workout. Guys doing burpees in a suit and tie. Imagine trying to stay serious while someone presents stats and there's just intense grunting in the background. Business up top, gym shorts down below. It's like a modern-day mullet for work attire. It says, hey, we're professionals, but also just a bunch of humans trying to make it through the day. What about the audience, huh? You guys must have some wild Zoom tales too. Spill 'em.
A guy busting out burpees during a meeting? That's a peak multitasking. Can't say I've seen that one before. It's like you're trying to focus on profits, and then there's this rhythmic thumping, right? And it's not the charts getting juicy. It's just Kevin in accounting working on his core. Makes you think, what other double lives are people leading behind those screens, huh? So guys, anyone else got some gems where work met personal in the funniest ways? What's your best thought my camera was off moment?
Let's see. So there was this time I was on a call, business as usual. Mid-sentence, my cat leaps onto the desk and face plants into the camera, tail high and proud, blocking everything. Guess she figured it was her close-up. Took me a minute to wrangle her out of frame. By then I'm red as a beet. Everyone's cracking up. But what gives, right? Might have been the break we all needed. These moments, they tell you loud and clear. Whatever role you're in, life's gonna waltz right in. Makes for some solid chuckles and a reminder not to take it all too seriously. What about you folks? Let's hear those oops stories.
You nailed it, Joe. When life waltzes in, usually like during the big meeting rather than your chill one-on-ones, it's always when you least expect it. And boy, do those tail-high surprises add some flavor to our daily virtual grind. It's not just cat photo bombs either. It's like your kid making a cameo as a Ninja Turtle while you're forecasting next quarter's sales, or suddenly becoming a meme because you were caught mid-yawn and now you look like you're howling. This stuff kind of levels the playing field, doesn't it? Makes you remember the person on the other side of the screen is living a whole life that can jump into frame at any second. Keeps us humble, and man, does it keep us laughing.
Yeah, it really does ground us, Simon. But let's push back a bit, because while these Zoom bloopers are hilarious, they've also stirred up some real talk about where we draw the line, huh? Like it's all laughs when someone's pet hijacks their screen. But what if that uninvited cameo is your messy room or private stuff in the background? We got to stay sharp on privacy because it's not just about being professional. It's about, protecting our space. So the question is, how do we keep bringing our authentic selves without oversharing by accident? Folks at home, weigh in. Ever overshared more than a chuckle during those video calls?
So for those just tuning in, we're diving into the lighter side of working from home, our favorite subject, Zoom bloopers. Like when you've got a cat showcasing its gymnastics routine mid-presentation, or someone getting their sweat on during a budget meeting. We've all had those moments where life just gate crashes your video calls with some unscheduled entertainment. But while it keeps things real and gives us a good laugh, we're also chatting about keeping that line between work and personal life kinda intact. Ever accidentally revealed a bit more of your home office than you intended to on camera? Yeah, we've been there. Keep sharing your stories. It's solid gold.
Absolutely, Simon. While this goldmine of bloopers keeps us laughing, we should also remember to keep it comfortable for everyone. It's about striking that balance. But these stories, they're what make our new normal so memorable. So folks, as you keep navigating the work-from-home jungle, think about how these moments add color to your days. What's a Zoom blooper you wouldn't mind happening again? Keep those stories coming.
Joe, with all this remote work lifestyle stuff we're discussing, it's fascinating how the lines are blurring between personal and professional life. It's not just bloopers anymore, it's a whole new way of living for some folks, like digital nomad families that are taking their kids on a VPN-infused adventure around the globe. Isn't that something? Raising your kiddos while you're hopping from one Airbnb to the next, each place with its own Wi-Fi password. I mean, sure beats my dog ate my homework, right? Kids now say, sorry, we had patchy internet in Bali. What's your take on this modern globe-trotting classroom they've got going?
Man, that's wild. Kids learning while on the move is its own education, real-world experience over textbooks. But there are trade-offs, like lacking a stable group of friends or that solid community vibe from a local school. It's a crazy change-up from how we grew up. Plus, they're soaking in all this emotional wisdom, watching their parents juggle deadlines with exploring new cultures. Talk about life skills out the wazoo. But I do wonder, is too much globe-trotting going to make it tough for kids to plant roots anywhere?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Like, you'll have these kids growing up super adaptable, sure, but at what cost? Roots are important too, right? I mean, having a home base, it's not just about a place to hang your hat. It's where you learn to build lasting relationships outside of the fam. It's part of who you are. Yeah, I get learning fractions by counting out foreign currency is cool and all, but sometimes just knowing you'll sit next to the same buddy at lunch every day, that's pretty priceless. Could be a tough call for parents deciding on this nomad life, huh?
Yeah, it's a puzzle. But let's toss in another piece here. Technology's supposed to shrink distances, right? We've got these tools for staying connected no matter where you park your RV. Kids FaceTiming friends from wherever they're at. Doesn't that kind of mitigate the whole roots issue? Yet I dunno. Something about physical presence can't be matched by pixels on a screen. You need those high fives, those playground disputes. And hey, let's not forget time zones. Try scheduling a play date when you're 8 hours ahead. So yeah, adaptable kids, that's great and all, but keeping them grounded, that's the real challenge. Keeping the tech tight is key, but is it enough to build a kid's social universe? What do you listeners think?
Digging deeper, aside from just staying in touch, there's something to be said about kids learning different norms and values firsthand. Like one day they're saying hola, next it's bonjour. It's a crazy cultural jigsaw they piece together. But there's this stability thing we're talking about. Friends who know your quirks, teachers who've watched you grow up, neighborhood go-to hangouts. Those are the familiar pieces kids carry with them. Sure, tech lets us bridge gaps. Your bestie's in your pocket, on your phone, but it's kinda not the same as kicking it at the mall or shooting hoops after school. The world's available via Wi-Fi, right? But those personal bonds, they feel different when you're changing time zones like underwear. It's tricky trying to balance broad horizons with deep roots. So how do digital nomad parents keep that equilibrium? Anyone out there doing this now? What's working for your crew?
Totally. Like blending those cultures into everyday learning does wonders for a kid's worldview. But that doesn't automatically solve missing out on those long-term friendships back home. Do share, folks. How do nomadic families out there find that sweet spot?
Well, on the flip side, some might argue the whole idea of needing a stationary root system is kind of outdated. It's not necessarily about the place, it's the people, right? Relationships can be maintained over distance with all our tech. And let's be real, kids adapt. So maybe we're underestimating their ability to thrive in a fluid environment. There are studies showing children who travel tend to be more creative and better problem solvers. So maybe it's us adults who've got it backwards, clinging to stability out of habit. This nomad thing could actually be setting up kids for success in a globalized world. What do you guys think? Could this be the new normal we're just starting to wrap our heads around?
You've got a point, Simon. We're like transitioning to this global mindset, and maybe traditional schooling just isn't the only way anymore. The key piece here could be the skills kids pick up when they're bouncing from country to country. It's about adaptability, right? Right? These nomad kids are practically born with a passport in hand, learning to navigate changes smoothly. And sure, online friendships don't replace those real-life high fives, but today's little globetrotters might be our future diplomats or international CEOs. Then again, there's a downside to always being new everywhere you go. Friends back home build histories while you collect stamps in your passport. So, where's the line between a well-traveled childhood and having a place that feels like home? It's a tough puzzle, no doubt. Listeners, any digital nomads out there want to chime in on this balance? Or anyone firmly believe in planting deep local roots for the kiddos?
You hit the nail right on the head, Joe. There's this epic scale we're balancing on, enriching global experiences on one side and the comforts of steady, local roots on the other. It really boils down to what each family values most. Now, whether being a perpetually new kid shapes you into a future leader or leaves you longing for a hometown is up in the air. Part of it might be about teaching kids that home isn't just a house, it's where the fam is, even if that's constantly changing. Hey listeners, what's your take? How do you give kids the best of both worlds? Let's keep mulling it over. What's next on the docket, Joe?
This nomad life's not just for tech wizards or Instagram influencers anymore, huh? It's expanding big time across different industries. You've got accountants in coffee shops from Costa Rica to Budapest, marketers strategizing from a van in Yosemite. But how do movies and TV paint this picture? Like it's all beachside laptops and Mai Tais at noon. Bit glossed over, maybe? What about those initial bumps in the road like finding good Wi-Fi or adjusting to new tax laws? Seems we're only fed the highlight reel. Let's peel back the Instagram filter a bit. Anyone out there dealt with the gritty side of nomad life?
Yeah. The media's take is always showing the dream life. Beach on a Tuesday? Sure. But they skip the Wi-Fi hunt and time zone juggling. That's super real. Those early struggles? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, because the early days are kind of like boot camp for digital nomads, right? Setting up a stable internet connection is mission critical, but not always a cakewalk. And stuff like figuring out health insurance when you're country hopping, it's tricky. Plus, there's the bit about establishing a routine while battling jet lag, or even finding a community of like-minded wanderers so you don't feel isolated and miss that sense of belonging. The media often skips these bits, but they're super key to knowing if this lifestyle's really cut out for you.
Exactly. And think about like the nitty-gritty stuff digital nomads face. It ain't all sunshine and smooth sailing. Like organizing your life in a suitcase. That's an art form. What do you even pack for a lifestyle where you're battling the chill of Iceland one week and the tropics the next? And let's not forget about keeping up with legal paperwork, visa restrictions, work permits. That's a full-time job by itself. Plus, there's this whole aspect of building a new local support system every time you move. Because let's be honest, long-distance friendships can hit rough patches. The media may glaze over these stories, but heck, they're the real chapters of Wi-Fi wanderlust.
And let's not gloss over the elephant in the room, the cost. Because like bouncing location to location ain't cheap, despite what those dreamy beach photos suggest. Early nomads got a budget like pros, or you're just, burning through cash faster than reliable Wi-Fi drops in a hostel. Plus, finding work that's truly remote and nomad-friendly can be a slog. It's not just about clocking in from paradise, it's about meshing with different time zones, being on call, deadlines. The whole shebang ramps up if you're freelancing or running your own gig. And yeah, packing your life into a suitcase, that romanticized moment hits a wall when you're searching for that one shirt you swore you packed, or when your laptop charger decides to play hide and seek. So, dear listeners, how about we take this sparkling wanderlust and give it a realistic polish? Any of you found yourselves in these pickles while setting out in your digital nomad journey? Let's spill some untold stories of the Wi-Fi wanderlust.
Oh man. So you're telling me these Instagram shots of laptops on beaches are a bit, like, airbrushed? That's some revelation. I guess starting out as a digital nomad comes with its own set of challenges that we don't always see, like finding jobs you can do from any corner of the world and keeping up with paperwork. Kind of daunting if you think about it. And costs. You'd assume living this nomadic life might be cheaper than, say, big city living, but that's not always the case, huh? Between flights, accommodation, and trying to figure out which pocket of your backpack you shoved your charger in, sounds like my kind of mess. Listeners tuning in, spill the beans. What was it like when you first ventured into this lifestyle? Did your bank account cry real tears, or was it smooth sailing? Share those gritty, unfiltered beginnings of your Wi-Fi wanderlust journey.
Fact is, Simon, even those perfect beach workspace shots don't tell you about the sand in your keyboard or the glare on your screen. The nomad life? It's not just a highlight reel, it's a whole bloopers collection too.
Absolutely, Joe. Those picture-perfect shots are just one slice of a much bigger pie. It's like, imagine trying to type with sandy fingers. Every keystroke is a crunchy reminder that the gram is only showing you half the story. And don't get me started on screen glare. Makes you think, what other nomad tales aren't making it into our feeds? Hey listeners, let's keep this convo going. What's your take on the real digital nomad lifestyle beyond those glossy snapshots?
Right? Simon, all this talk about the digital nomad life gets me thinking about one key player in this entire saga, the almighty internet. Back in the day, travelers had to mail postcards or find a phone booth if they wanted to say, I'm alive. But now it's this relentless crusade for Wi-Fi. Listeners, ever had to crack the code to get online in Nowheresville? I mean, satellite internet and international SIM cards are lifesavers nowadays. Share those desperate, hopefully hilarious, attempts to catch a signal when you're off the grid.
Oh, absolutely, Joe. There was this one time I was in, let's call it a rustic cabin in the woods. Picture me, city guy going full Walden Pond, right? Hilarity ensues. Instead of embracing my inner Thoreau, I'm outside, smartphone hoisted to the sky, doing some sort of Wi-Fi rain dance. Had an urgent email to send, so it's like mission critical. Ended up balancing my phone on top of a tree stump, where for whatever reason, that was the sweet spot, 1 bar of signal, if I was lucky. And guess what? I had to stay there, perched like a flamingo, to tap out my reply. Nature's great, sure, but without a solid internet connection, it was more comedy than connectivity. So yeah, those remote office setups you see online often skip these less dignified moments. What about you guys? Got any similar hunt for the hotspot stories?
Ha! That's classic, Simon. Just goes to show nature doesn't give a damn about your deadlines. I can just picture it. You standing on one leg, phone stretched to the sky like some kind of tech-obsessed flamingo. Man, we've built rockets that land themselves but still do this crazy dance for 1 bar of cell service. It's 2023. Gotta love the irony. All right, folks, top that one. I want to hear your best backwoods Wi-Fi shenanigans.
All right, Joe, I'm dying to know. Have listeners got any stories that beat my forest escapade? I bet someone's got a tale of trekking uphill both ways just for a sliver of service. Or maybe like squatting in the most awkward position, because if you move an inch, adios, internet. Let's hear it. What's the craziest thing you've done for connectivity on the road?
Yeah, listeners have been sharing some wild stories. See, this one time, I was in this remote village. Think no Starbucks for miles, no golden arches. Scary, right? So there's me needing to fire off this urgent podcast update. Anyway, I get a tip that there's a signal on this one particular hill. I trek out there, gear in tow, feeling like some sort of low-budget Indiana Jones. I'm climbing, sweating buckets, and finally reach the top. There it is, 1 glorious bar of service. But catch is, I had to balance my phone on a rock, angle myself like some contortionist, all while swatting away what must have been mutant mosquitoes. All that effort for a WhatsApp message. Hey, new episode drops soon. Kind of puts things into perspective, you know? Hey listeners, can you relate to these kinds of adventures? What hoops have you jumped through just to shoot a text or check an email? Let's hear those tales of connectivity quests from your own expeditions.
Ha, Joe, you're like the tech version of a wildlife survivor. Reminds me of this one time. I'm out in the desert, right? Some small town festival, nowhere near civilization. The kind of place where GPS is just like, good luck. Needed to send an urgent proof for our show banner. You know, deadlines wait for no man and all that. So I'm wandering around this dusty wasteland, phone held up to the gloomy sky, hoping for a miracle. I end up finding this beat-up van with stickers from every band you've never heard of. Guy inside says he's got satellite internet. It's sketchy, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. I crowd into this tiny space with like 5 other desperate souls. We're all crouched over this contraption that looks more like a 1980s sci-fi movie prop. And boom, I managed to get that email sent after several heart-stopping drops of connectivity. Celebrated like I'd found water on Mars. It's those moments. You realize our whole world's hinged on this invisible web, yeah? Chuckling at myself now, but boy, it felt epic then. What about you folks? Tell me someone's had to cozy up to a stranger for a sliver of signal. Let's swap stories.
You basically MacGyvered your connection in a desert, Simon. And yep, nothing like a moment of desperation to turn a suspicious van into a cozy internet cafe. All right, listeners, gather round. It's story time. Tell us about the craziest place you've ever received an important email or the most unconventional Wi-Fi setup you've crafted. And let's be real, best story gets bragging rights and our eternal admiration. Go.
And hey, I've just got to say, finding a Wi-Fi signal in the wild should be an Olympic sport. Can you imagine? Gold medals in hotspot hunting. All right, listeners, bring on those gold medal-worthy tales.
Oh man, Simon, internet hopping as an Olympic sport? 'Cause yeah, we'd all be like world-class athletes by now. Picture it, the 100-meter dash replaced by the 100-meter signal search. Instead of sprinting, competitors are just running around with their arms up, because apparently that's how you get good reception, right? And diving? Forget the pool. Now it's about lunging into the unknown to find Wi-Fi under rocks and trees. And for the finale, synchronized hotspot hunting. Teams coordinated in a ballet of bizarre poses, all trying to log into that 1 bar of 4G. Keep those stories coming, listeners. Let's see who takes home the gold in our infinite podcast connectivity crusade.
Ha! The 100-meter signal search sounds spot on, Joe. I'd pay to see that event for sure. Just the thought of athletes diving into bushes with phones instead of water tickles me. And synchronized hotspot hunting? That's pure gold, literal and figurative. Alrighty, fellow wanderers of the web wilderness, let's keep this thread alive. What are your most creative, desperate, or downright bonkers experiences in the great connectivity crusades out there? Share away. We're all ears, and pretty bad at keeping a straight face. Keep 'em coming.
Speaking of keeping things going, let's swing from the connectivity crusade to another kind of adaptation in our digital nomad lives: work-life balance. When you're bouncing around the globe, you kind of have to realign your productivity beats with the local customs, like siestas. Imagine clocking in at a Spanish city. You're all set for an afternoon hustle then. Wham! It's siesta time. The whole town shuts down, and there you are, laptop open, coffee cooling, wondering if it's nap o'clock or crunch time. So listeners, how's about it? Ever had to rejig your work habits trying to harmonize with local customs? Maybe those very practices turned out to boost your workflow? Share your tips and tales of cultural curveballs in the workday game.
Man, Joe, siesta schedule? That's like trying to marathon during a hopscotch tournament. You're in the groove and siesta time hits. Sure, a midday nap sounds sweet, but what about when you've got deadlines screaming louder than a teething baby? Adapting? Easier said than done when your peak work wave crashes into a cultural calm sea. I remember trying to mimic the locals. I'd end up sprawled on a park bench, laptop balanced on my belly, thinking, this'll totally boost my creativity, right? Spoiler, it didn't. Now, don't get me wrong here. There's gold in them hills of traditional practices. A proper siesta could slice burnout, you know? But when your brain is wired for the go, 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 slipping into slow, slow, slow is like tricky, mighty tricky. So folks, hit us with it. How do you wrap your rhythm around these customs without tossing your productivity out the window? Is the answer embracing the art of the power nap, or should we stick to our turbocharged ways? Let's hash it out.
Siesta-wrapped productivity, huh? It's like juggling while sleepwalking. You've got to master this delicate balance, or it all comes crashing down. Now that's a life hack worth discussing.
Yeah, Joe. So, here's the thing. While you're trying to fit into this siesta vibe, it feels like herding cats, you know? Especially if you're not genetically programmed for pauses, if your motor's always running. But I started noticing something, right? Taking a step back during local downtime, like fully unplugging, it can fire up your synapses in fresh ways, like that post-siesta clarity is kind of unreal. Maybe there's method to the madness? So yeah, while initially it seems counterintuitive, melding with these rhythms might just be a productivity cheat code we never knew we needed. A hard reset leads to boosting creativity, or hey, maybe even sanity. It's about syncing with the sun more than our watches, which is ironically freeing if you think about it. Or at least that's what I tell myself when battling those workflow gremlins. Heh. How about everyone else? Any personal revolutions after embracing the siesta or other cultural timeouts? Share away.
Yeah, so here's the further scoop on that. It's like we live in a fast-paced world, right? We're conditioned to think non-stop work equals peak productivity. But what if it doesn't? Here's the thing, a siesta isn't just a nap. It's like this ingrained downtime, almost sacred. And what do we have? Coffee-powered keyboard marathons, huh? But taking these breaks can actually prevent burnout. It's kind of wild when you dive into it. Adopting the siesta means you got to rejig your day. Early rise, morning grind, then smack power down. It feels wrong initially, leaving emails unread, tasks pending. But after that break, it's like a second wind. Your brain's recharged, your focus narrowed. Somehow you get more done in less time. Efficiency and relaxation. Who knew? So it ain't an extended lunch or plain old laziness. It's rewiring our stress-addled brains to work with natural rhythms. I've seen folks reach zen-like states post-siesta. So yeah, listeners, how's swapping hustle for hush worked out for you? Let's get those brains picking over some cultural, slow-cooking wisdom.
Absolutely, Joe. Rebooting our idea of productivity is like swapping engines while flying a plane. Scary, but maybe brilliant. It's so ingrained to just push through, right? But taking these sacred pauses, these siestas, it's like telling the overworked mind, hey, buddy, chill out for a sec, then bam, you're back and buzzing with ideas. So I'm curious, Have any of our listeners tried this kind of thing? Realigning your work clock to local culture times? And did it crash and burn? Or were you surfing newfound productivity waves cause of it? Let's hear what juggling acts, or should I say siesta synapses, you've got going.
You know, Simon, there's this study that suggests even a short nap can significantly improve memory and learning. Imagine combining the power of naps with espresso shots. We'd be unstoppable.
Well, Joe, unstoppable, or maybe just napping straight through deadlines. I get it, a quick snooze can jumpstart the gray matter, and sure, who doesn't love a cheeky power nap? But there's this whole thing about timing, right? Like you tuck in for a short siesta, then oops, you've missed like 2 meetings and a dozen emails. The art here is not letting that productivity pendulum swing too far into la la land. And combine naps with espresso? Sounds like we're brewing a recipe for some kind of hyper caffeinated zombie, awake, but not so much functional? So yeah, the trick's got to be finding that sweet spot where rest meets zest without tipping over into chaos. Honestly, I'm curious how our listeners manage this mashup. Got any fail-proof methods to share, folks? How do you keep from turning a productive siesta into an accidental 8-hour time travel to tomorrow?
This siesta thing isn't really one size fits all. Sure, naps are great, but what if that's not your style? Maybe you're the type who gets groggy instead of re-energized. Plus, there's this. Studies suggest timing is key. Nap too long and you hit deep sleep, making you more like a groggy bear than a sharp-as-a-tack go-getter. The trick? Power naps. Like 10 to 20 minutes max to avoid sleep inertia. Yeah, that's the sciencey term for post-nap sluggishness. And managing after siesta chaos? Maybe it's about boundaries, setting multiple alarms, or using that downtime before the siesta for the real heavy lifting, saving lighter tasks for later. Sounds nice in theory, but then reality laughs and watches your best-laid plans fall apart. So I'm throwing down a challenge here. Anyone got a fail-safe strategy, or maybe a hilarious siesta snooze-gone-wrong story? Because let's face it, we've probably all overshot those 20 minutes once or twice, right? Let's hear your siesta synapse successes or disasters.
Yeah, Joe, finding that siesta sweet spot is like navigating a minefield blindfolded. Guess it boils down to knowing yourself, right? Like, can you do the siesta shuffle, or are you going to trip into deep sleep territory? Everyone's internal clock ticks different, so no wonder there's a mix of epic siesta wins and, well, hilarious faceplants in the quest for rebooted vigor. It's all about testing the waters, I reckon. So let's keep this convo rolling. How do each of you tailor these local customs to fit inside your own productivity puzzle? Hit us up with those tales, tips, or triumphant strategies as the global beat keeps on drumming.
Switching gears, let's wander down a more philosophical path. As perpetual movers and shakers in this world, is there really an end destination? Or are we just eternally chasing horizons with each sunrise?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. It's like this one time, I was camping out in this tiny mountain village, right? Every local I met had this story about leaving, but always circling back home. And me, I was just passing through, mile after mile, country after country. I never set down roots. But chilling with these folks got me thinking, maybe the journey's the thing, not where you drop your bags at the end of the day. It's kind of fascinating. Whenever locals ask me, where's home for you? My mind would go blank. Is home where family is, or is it more an idea we lug around in our heads as we roam? So yeah, I keep wondering if there's a place that'll make me hit the brakes, or am I destined to roll on forever? And I bet lots of our listeners grapple with similar wanderlust woes. What do you guys think? Is home where your Wi-Fi connects automatically, or is it woven into a more intricate tapestry of our nomadic souls?
You make a compelling point there, Simon. But let me add this. Some folks might argue that without putting down roots, you're missing out, right? Like perpetual motion is great until it's not, until you yearn for something more stationary. And here's another angle. Relationships and family dynamics get kind of tumbled when you're a rolling stone. Sure, home can be wherever you feel at peace, but aren't we all just seeking our own version of an anchor? I've met digital nomads who, after years of vagabonding, decided to settle. They talk about community, connection, stuff that's tough to cultivate when your backdrop's ever changing. So yeah, it's tricky balancing growing wings versus laying down roots. Roots offer stability, but wings, they promise freedom. I guess in the end, home may not be a physical place. It's like maybe it's those moments that give us pause, make us feel part of something bigger. Listeners, chime in. Are permanent moves essential for fulfillment? Or are you completely content with being constant travelers? Is home just a state of being for you? Or do we need that end destination to truly nestle into life?
You know, Joe, I once met this old sailor, right? Guy says the sea is his home. He's been everywhere but lived nowhere. Makes you wonder, maybe we don't all need that white picket fence to feel at peace. Maybe it's the waves, not the shore, that call us.
True, it's like without the waves, there's no adventure. And what's life without a little splash of uncertainty to keep things, interesting?
Oh, totally, Joe. There was this time I wound up in Thailand, right? Stumbled into this lantern festival. Everyone's releasing their wishes into the sky. And it hits me, we're all just flickers of light floating around. Some drift, others burn out quick, and a few land somewhere unexpected. I'm scribbling my wish on this lantern, and I realize it's not about anchoring down. It's about this constant dance with change. Not knowing where I'd be in a week felt like freedom, but also kind of lonely. So this lady, like some wise sage in flip-flops, tells me the beauty isn't reaching some place to stay, it's in the seeking itself. It stuck with me, Joe, because isn't that what we're doing? Seeking connection, stories, ourselves, and maybe that quest is our true home.
That's deep, Simon. Maybe the journey's the key, not the destination. Whether you find a place to call home or just keep seeking, that's your dance with life. What do you all think? Is there really an end destination for us wanderers? Let's keep this philosophical compass spinning, folks.
You know, speaking of journeys and destinations, Joe, it's funny how the quest for the ideal workspace is part of that dance. Have you noticed? More people are setting up shop where the view's nothing but ocean, sky, and maybe a palm tree or two. Remote coastal enterprises, work's latest frontier.
Absolutely, Simon. Coastal workspaces are like the new hot desk spots. Stick a laptop on a beach bar and bam, you're CEO of Seaview Innovations or something. It's not just good for the soul, but great for productivity too. Folks in these setups often talk about feeling more relaxed. Stress sort of melts with each wave, making way for creativity. And it's not just freelancers or solo entrepreneurs. Companies are catching this breeze too. You've got businesses fully operating from sandy shores, blending work life with beach life. As the world went remote, smart minds asked, why chain ourselves to city desks? Mental health benefits are no joke. Imagine replacing coffee breaks with quick dips in the ocean. So these remote coastal enterprises, they're booming because they offer both the metaphorical and literal fresh air that we're all craving. Listeners tuning in from your beachside hammocks or dreaming of them, share how switching from urban jungles to seaside sanctuaries has changed the game for you.
But here's the thing, Joe. This idea of, ditching the traditional office for a coastal breeze might sound like paradise, but let's not sugarcoat it too much. Sure, the mental health perks are real, ocean views beating out gray cubicles any day, but isn't there a catch? For every Seaview Innovations thriving, there's got to be some sunburned soul squinting at their screen, cursing the glare. And don't get me started on sand, gets everywhere. Laptops don't mix well with the beach. Plus, reliability issues like shaky Wi-Fi signals or last-minute monsoons that can turn your chill into chaos. So yeah, Joe, there's a flip side to this breezy coin. People must adapt big time to make these remote seaside gigs work. It's not all hammocks and high tides. Though I've got to say, if anyone's figured out how to keep seagulls from, decorating their workspace, please, enlighten us. What are the secret struggles behind your beach backdrop? Or maybe share how you turned those challenges into coastal conquests.
Sometimes that sea breeze carries a storm, sure makes for an unpredictable office day.
Oh, Joe, that's spot on. Reminds me of this time I set up my office on this gorgeous Caribbean beach, right? White sand, turquoise water, looked like one of those fancy screensavers. First few days, productivity through the roof. Then Mother Nature's like, hold my beer. Out of nowhere, this tropical whirlwind kicks up, papers flying, laptop nearly goes for a swim. Total mayhem. I was there thinking it'd be all peace and zen by the sea. Nope. Ended up chasing my notes along the shore like some slapstick comedy act. You figure working seaside's all sunshine and rainbows until your paradise turns into a desk tornado. And protecting your tech from salty air is an art form in itself. But hey, we live, we laugh, we learn, right? What's your coastal office crisis? Love to hear those tales.
I hear you, man. But let's not forget the real kicker, infrastructure, or often the lack of it. These remote paradises aren't always built for business-grade tech. You've got places where high-speed internet means 1 bar of 3G on a good day. And security, right? Sipping mojitos between emails is cool until someone swipes your tablet. Not to mention, try hopping on a Zoom call with a parrot joining in. It's quirky for like a minute, then it's just another peck of problems. On top of that, finding reliable talent can be tough when everyone's on island time. So yeah, setting up shop in paradise has its own set of thunderclouds. But hey, we adapt, we overcome. Those slapstick comedy moments, they're golden lessons wrapped in chaos. Listeners, weigh in. How do you mix hustle and hammocks without getting burned or blowing away in a sea gale? Let's untangle this salty mess together.
Wait, that really happens? I mean, we glamorize this coastal office concept, but sheesh, mixing mojitos and meetings, that's something else. Setting up tech in these remote slices of heaven must be like trying to get a cactus to grow in the Arctic. And security, 1 second you're typing away, next minute you're turning into a low-budget action hero chasing down your swiped stuff. And don't even get me started on the local wildlife joining your calls. Like, how do you stay professional with Polly wanting more than just a cracker mid-presentation? It's a riot. Plus, I can only imagine that island time isn't exactly syncing with peak productivity. Hiring people who think deadlines are just suggestions because the surf's up? Yikes. Gotta say though, for those figuring it out, props to you. You make it work against all odds. It's downright heroic. Can't wait to hear how you guys tackle these tropical trials.
And let's not forget the time zones. Somebody's always working in the dark, while others have their toes in the sand.
Totally, Joe. You're right on with those time zones. It's a weird juggle. I bet there are folks starting their workday when someone else is watching the sunset. It's all synchronous, yet asynchronous, an odd harmony. Speaking of harmony and chaos, it's like this delicate balance of solitude in these far-off workplaces can make or break your productivity. On one hand, you've got the serenity of an island setting boosting focus, but too much quiet and bam. Suddenly, you're feeling more isolated than productive. I've seen teams find their sweet spot with cool communication strategies, really lays out the whole no man is an island thing, even if, technically they're on one. The question of how solitude impacts work and camaraderie, especially in remote paradises, kind of fascinates me. How do our listeners navigate this? Island isolation, paradise productivity. What's your secret sauce?
Oh man, Simon, you got me thinking back to this freelance gig I had a while ago. I was tucked away in this little coastal cabin, the definition of serene, right? First week, I'm crushing tasks like never before. The solitude's like rocket fuel for my focus. But by week 2, the quiet starts getting loud, if you know what I mean. Every little sound is magnified, and I start talking to the seagulls just for some sort of feedback loop. It hits me. Balance is everything. So I set up regular calls with the team, even just for chit-chat. It keeps the workflow smooth and, more importantly, kept me sane. For all you listening in, finding that balance between isolation and connection, it's key. Whether through tech or just setting clear check-in times, it stops your paradise from turning into a productive, prison. Would love to hear how others keep their team spirit alive when working remote. What's your rhythm?
Okay. So here's my take on it, Joe. Being one with the palm trees sounds cool and everything. But clap once if you're in an island cabin and you've gone a whole day without uttering a single word to another human. That solitude can sneak up on you like some ninja. Now, mixing those laid-back vibes with team check-ins is clever, right? Regular chit-chat for sanity's sake. Totally get that. But I've got to say, not everyone has your discipline, my friend. Picture this. One teammate's busy building sandcastles of productivity while someone else is just building sandcastles. And where's the line between accountable check-ins and being micromanaged from a distance? It's tricky. Some folks might end up feeling more under the microscope than connected. Plus, tech helps until it doesn't. Ever been mid-conversation when suddenly, poof, Wi-Fi decides to take a nap? Frustrating isn't even the word. So yeah, listeners, we need input. How do you keep that island dream from going castaway? Are there tools or tricks you use that make your secluded workstation feel less island prison and more team paradise? Share them, because some of us might be talking to birds as coworkers over here.
Simon, imagine if those birds could actually give us the next billion-dollar business idea. Talk about a tweet storm.
Joe, imagine that. Ha! If I could get stock tips from a seagull or marketing strategies from a macaw, I'd be golden. Like, who needs LinkedIn when you've got avian advisors, right? But back to the whole island solitude deal, and not the feathery kind. For me, the way to keep from feeling too isolated while chasing those paradise productivity dreams is all about setting the vibe just right. You know, even with team calls and chats, there's this underrated hero, ambient noise. There are these apps now that simulate a coffee shop buzz or like an office hum. Sort of tricks your brain into thinking you're around people, even helps some folks concentrate better. Wouldn't it be something if we could balance the zen of solitude without missing out on that spark you get from bouncing ideas off others? So yeah, listeners, tell us, how do you merge the two worlds? Hack the system for better workflow without losing touch with humanity, or ending up chatting about revenue projections with Ramon the Parrot.
Nah, I bet Ramon the Parrot would just keep pitching Pirate Bay as a treasure trove investment opportunity.
Oh, for sure. Ramon's probably got all sorts of ship-shape ideas about booty management. But staying on course, literally and metaphorically speaking, in island isolation is its own treasure hunt. Having your office in paradise feels jackpot-level luxe until you realize the solitude can also be a bit of a desert island deal. The big question for remote island workers has to be, how do I stay connected not just to Wi-Fi, but to people? So while we're spitballing here, let's float this one. Virtual co-working spaces, like hopping on a video link where everyone does their work, kind of shoulder to shoulder, cyber style. It beats talking life insurance plans with a parrot anyways. Plus, could stop you from sailing off into the horizon of isolation. And back to ambient noise apps, they're like, well, if white noise had a cooler younger brother. Seriously though, finding creative ways to feel plugged in without plugging into insanity, that's gotta be key. So tell us your tales from the high seas of home offices. Our mateys, how do you keep your social sanity?
I see where you're going with that, Simon, and it sounds good on paper. But let me play devil's advocate here, because there's another side to this coin, right? So virtual co-working spaces and ambient noise apps, they're cool and all, but some might argue they're just band-aids on a bigger issue, the lack of physical interaction. We humans are social creatures by nature, and there's something about actual face-to-face that technology can't fully replicate. Research points out that body language, eye contact, and even those spontaneous coffee break chats actually lead to better collaboration and idea generation. You don't get that authentic connection through a screen, you know what I mean? Plus, long-term isolation, even with a paradise backdrop, can lead to feelings of alienation and decreased team morale. So while we try innovative solutions, acknowledging the value of in-person teamwork is crucial too. For folks stranded on remote work islands, considering hybrid models or routine meetups could be key in combining the best of both worlds. What do y'all think? Is less really more when it comes to solitude in your workspace? Give us your 2 cents, or doubloons, so to speak.
Hey, before we wrap this up, huge thanks to all the listeners who tuned in to ride these waves with us. You guys are what makes this whole shindig worthwhile. And don't you go turning into castaways on us. Make sure you come back for more banter tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll be here dropping another bucket full of thoughts and laughs just for you. Stay awesome, y'all. And remember, whether you're grinding in paradise or keeping it local, Keep that spirit high and those ideas flowing. Catch you next time on Infinite Podcast. Simon out.
And I'm Joe reminding you, why fear a shipwreck when you can surf the wave? Catch those curves tomorrow, listeners. Keep living infinite.
Man, you ever try typing with sand in your keyboard? It's like the beach is fighting back. Every click is a crunch.